Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World. Today we have two guests that are in my professional referral group. Andrew Green of the Epley Legal Group, who is an attorney licensed in Ohio and Kentucky. He's a CPA that focuses on forensic accounting in Ohio and Kentucky. And Sue Slusher, who is a life tribute celebrant, a family care advisor at the Arlington Memorial Gardens Funeral Home and Memorial Park. Welcome to our show today.
Well, thanks for having us here.
Yes, thank you, Kathryn.
Well, you know, it's amazing because really you integrate easily for what you do. You work, Andrew, in not only probate, but trust and wills and what else?
Well, yes, we provide estate planning in general, which includes wills, it includes powers of attorney, it includes trust in certain instances, health, living wills, healthcare directives, which plays a little bit into what Susan does. And so what we do is you have, the issues come up, and we've talked about this before on some other occasions. It's a life event that is going to affect somebody at some point in their life, or their relative, or their parent or their child, what have you. And what we try to encourage people to do is to plan ahead, just like you do with investments or any types of other things in your life. And it is not always the most popular or comfortable subject to address, and I'm sure you can attest to that very well. So what we try to do is to encourage our clients to take the time to set up a meeting, discuss it, make some decisions that are important. And these are decisions that you make over yourself and your property and perhaps your children. So there's a lot of things that intersect all areas of life that you have an opportunity, if you plan ahead, to take control over, or at least have input into how they go forward in the event that you're not able to make those decisions for yourself.
And Sue, you don't want to wait until someone passes away to do it,
No,
right?
we certainly don't.
Why?
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 That's the big thing, isn't it? Why? Why would you want to wait? How will you know what someone's wishes are unless you've had what we call the conversation, the talk? Nobody wants to talk about this, believe me, not even in my family.
Right.
But we all need to talk about it. When someone dies, you have 24, 48 hours to make major decisions. And if you don't know what your loved one wants, you are really stuck.
So that's the reason why I brought you together, because it seems to me that the easiest way to make this happen is to have two different entities working together, right?
Right.
That will make it a lot easier for that person that's not so willing to sit down and do their will or have a discussion, because you don't know when it can happen. It could happen when a child's 15. It could happen to a 31-year-old. You just don't know, right?
Sad things happen, and you don't always know when to expect them. That's why I say, if you try and plan out, if you have children, you should be doing this right away. I mean, something could happen, you don't want it to happen, but there are automobile crashes every day. And you can end up where you have children that you need a guardianship for.
Right.
Or let's say that you want to be, you wanted to donate to anatomical gifts, things like that. If you haven't made those decisions, that's not going to happen. And I think the interesting thing about where I come from and where Sue comes from is I'm seeing it on the front end, trying to give advice and capture what the client wants in terms of their last wishes and other related areas. And then two is dealing with it when the actuality has happened. And so the more that you can coordinate with your attorneys and people in your family and people like yourself, you can capture and make sure that things are handled the best way that you can under the circumstances, which are always difficult to begin with. But so it's planning and then it's coordination. And if you do those things, you can at least exercise a certain amount of control over your last wishes. Now, there's something else that we can talk about that involves issues like living wills and things like that when you're actually in a position where you can't make decisions for yourself, but you haven't passed away, and those are very important too. And we can get to that when you feel when the time's right. But I think attorneys working with people like Sue is a good idea because then you can coordinate. She has knowledge. People have knowledge that you've done it. Because one of the biggest things that pet peeves or foibles or what have you is that people sometimes do these things 10 years ago, and either their circumstances have changed or they just didn't tell anybody.
Right.
And so nobody knows that they named an executor or that they had wishes about how they want to be either cremated or buried or what have you, and nobody knows. So that's why the planning part with the attorney is important, because then you can make copies, you can let the executor know, you can make advance arrangements with the funeral homes. I mean, you can do the things that frankly are going to have to be done, and you'd rather them being done in an organized way, I think, than just
Yes.
Yeah.
So the conversation starter kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I want you to talk about with
what we do is to help people to get prepared. So pre-planning is not only where do you want to be buried, do you want cremation,
Right.
What do you want? You need that conversation. But you also need the conversation where you come in,
Right.
Andrew. So we have started giving out information on the conversation starter kit. So it's a very simple formula, and talking about what do you need to get ready. Have that conversation with your loved ones, whether you are 30, 40, 50, 80. You don't know how many people I see that come in to pre-plan, or they're thinking about it, they haven't made a decision, and they're in their 80s. Tell you a quick story.
Go right ahead. Share it with our audience.
Okay. I was at a health fair at a senior center one year. Right next to me at the table was the Alzheimer group.
Right.
I had a couple come up to me. They were living at this senior nursing assisted living community that we were holding this. Husband and wife, they come up and they said, "Oh, Arlington, I know where that is, Arlington Memorial Gardens." "Yes." And the gentleman says, "Oh, we've got that figured out." And the wife turns to him and she said, "We do?" And he says, "Oh yeah, we do." And she says, "What do we have figured out?" He said, "Well, you're going to your family in Pennsylvania. That's where you're going to be buried. And I'm going to be buried here in the city." And she looks at him and she gives him this look. Oh, they're about to have a talk. The talk they should have had before they went to the nursing home. Because she said, "Why do you think I want to go to Pennsylvania?" "Well, that's where your family's from." And she says, "But our family is here.
Right.
Our family's here. Why wouldn't we be together?" Well, suddenly they're walking away and they're having a huge conversation. So if you wouldn't want to be in Pennsylvania where you don't want to be, you better have the talk.
So if I could ask a question,
Sure.
do you go to visit people in say a nursing home, retirement community, that sort of thing, and talk to them about the services you provide and these kinds of conversations?
We do seminars.
Okay.
We do seminars. I do
okay.
health fairs. We try to get the information out.
Right.
And this
Because
is
it
another
isn't
way.
something-
This
yes.
is another way to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
of
Yes,
course,
exactly.
yeah.
Nobody's going to, here's the deal. Anybody sitting at home saying, Hey, it's a beautiful sunny day. I don't have anything else to do. I've been shopping. I've done everything I need to do. Hey, let's go buy some cemetery property. Doesn't happen.
That's usually not on the top 10
Doesn't
list
happen.
after the day.
Not on the top of that list. You know. So I see two sets of families come into our office. They've both had a death.
Mhm.
One comes in, maybe it's a wife, maybe one of the grown children are with her. They've made their arrangements. They come in, they sign. We talk about, you know, do you need a reception after, which we have a facility for? Do you need, I see a veteran, what do you need? All the little things.
Sure.
They sign the papers. They go off, they go home, they relax. The next family comes up. You see them coming towards the door. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 people because they've made no plans.
Right.
None. So they have to bring the whole family. That means in-laws and everybody.
Now, when somebody
That's
comes
tough.
to you and sets up a plan in
Yes.
advance, do they designate somebody that you will deal with respect to the details of, you know, having it paid for and just
Right.
getting everybody
They can actually
invited?
pre-plan,
and
Andrew.
They pre-plan and identify
Yeah.
the person. And all
You
that.
know.
Well, because the reason I ask is if you have
Sure.
a will, for example, you'd have an executor who would
Yes.
legally be the one to make those decisions. They could be the same person, or maybe they could be a family friend. I just wasn't sure how it
We
worked
ask
out.
that information.
Yeah.
And we try to gather that information. We also give them information if they haven't completed that.
Yeah.
So we give them a personal planning organization guide so they can put that in there.
Right.
Where's their will? Where's this?
Yeah.
Where's that?
Right.
So if they haven't done that already, that plants the seed. It's like, oh yeah, we were going to get around to that too.
Right.
So we're there to tell them, put that in here. You can just go through the book. It has all the questions.
Right.
Where is everything? What
No,
decisions
I think
do
it's
you
I think it's
want?
excellent because it allows
Yes.
everybody to know what the wishes are. It gives you an
Right.
opportunity to know what you know the people that you're involved with, and it just makes there's nothing worse than having nothing there, and then you got to figure it out from scratch. That's kind of the
Exactly.
point of really this, I think, is to do it ahead of time.
Yes, so we encourage them. We encourage them to get the healthcare proxy, to get their living will, all the papers they need. I once went to a seminar where an attorney was there, a young woman, and she said everybody over the age of 18 needs a healthcare proxy.
Yeah,
They
correct.
need
Yeah.
that. Suddenly it hit me, you know, I thought, oh, I'm going to have a seminar for that because they're right. You know, once you're over 18, your parents can't make those decisions.
No, and there are several. I mean, it's a good segue. I don't because there are in Ohio and Kentucky are slightly different in the way they do it. It's essentially the same goal, which is to give a person a decision over resuscitation
Right.
and when they're in terminal situations, or when they're just simply incapacitated and need somebody else to make decisions for them. Either and they're not always about the medical care. They can also be about the financial issues. You know, you might have real
Absolutely.
estate that you got to sell, or a bank account that's in your name. I mean, there's a lot of documents that relate to just managing your life when you're unable to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the chance to designate who that is ahead of time is really the advantage.
Right.
And on the-
I would add one last thing. Sorry.
Okay.
This all sounds very, complicated. It is really not. It's actually fairly straightforward, and it's affordable, and it's not that time consuming. So it's not a process where you're coming up with $10,000 for 14 meetings and all that. You come in, we have documents ready, we ask questions. I'm sure you do similar
Right.
thing, and the fees are reasonable for the documents produced, and everybody can and should do it if they can afford to do it.
Right.
And on that note, we need to take a short break.
Okay.
And we'll be
I
right
talked too
back.
long.
Is that fine? No, that's fine. So would you give your website, please?
I will. Epley Legal Group is our website, and our phone number is 513-621-6275. Spells out Mark. Mark Epley is our leader, and call us for any of these needs that we discussed today.
And Sue, would you like to give your website?
Absolutely.
Go right
It
ahead.
is the Arlington Memorial Gardens at amgardens.org.
And we'll be right back after these important messages.
Ballerina.
Sometimes all it takes to be a dad is remembering how to be a kid again. Take time to be a dad today.
No more, it's none of my business.
No more, he didn't mean it.
No more, not my problem.
No more, she was flirting with him.
No more, she was asking for it.
No more, boys will be boys.
No more, I'll say something next time.
No more bystanding.
No more ignorance.
No more excuses.
No more.
We are back on Kathryn Raaker's World, and our guests today are attorney Andrew Green and of the Epley Legal Group, and we have also with us Sue Slusher from the Arlington Memorial Gardens. And we've been talking about planning and pre-planning of your life, which really it is.
Right.
You never can tell when you're going to get cancer, or when somebody's going to be in an accident or whatever. I think it's important to pick an executor of your estate that is going to be easy to work with.
Right.
Because sometimes if you put a relative in charge, there could be squabbling, there could be jealousy, there could be lots of different things that can happen.
Correct.
So I think, personally, it's easier to pick your banker, somebody that can look at the situation and work with you and your family.
Right.
Because I've seen so many families break apart because of that.
Oh, absolutely. And there are other things. I think we were talking the last time we were together, and you had named an executor, and we're talking about you naming an executor, and then in 10 years they may live in California, and you know maybe the relationship dynamics have changed. So you want to keep that updated. But I do kind of agree with you, Kathryn, which is if you take the family out of it, unless you have a single, an only child or something like that.
Right.
But if you have multiple people, I've seen families that don't stop talking to each other over estate things, and that's another reason to have the will. Because if you don't have the will, then the fighting really starts. Because there's nobody, the person hasn't said, I want them to have my gun collection or my stamp collection or this bond or whatever it might be. And so then it's a no, I know she wanted me to have that, or the arguments start, and it's unfortunate to see.
Well, I want to share something with you. My grandmother was very smart. Before she died, she said, you know what, we're going to have a little family meeting. I said, great. She said, here's everything I own, and this is who's getting whatever. Before I die, I want to know that it went to the right person, so I'm giving it to you ahead of time.
Right.
Which I think is a brilliant idea when you think about it.
Yeah,
if they can afford to do that, why not?
Right. You can avoid the problem by having already made delivery of whatever it is you want to give to them.
That's right.
And this kind of gets into another area which people sometimes get confused by, which is probate court. Probate court is a system whereby the judge makes sure that the estate is not defrauded, looted, what have you. And there's either a will that names somebody to be in charge of the estate, or the judge will then choose somebody, usually a family member. Spouse is the first choice normally, but it could be a child or some other kin. And then if not, then perhaps they might name the attorney. But the point being is that probate court is a process that can also be avoided to some extent by establishing things like living trusts and putting assets in those. So probate is not a terrible process, but it can be lengthy. There's obviously some fees, and you're also putting a judge in charge of some of the decisions if there are disagreements about what something meant. So if you put something in a trust, it's administered outside of probate. There are other assets that are common to most people that are also outside of probate. Like a house is usually owned what's called joint right of survivorship. So it doesn't go through probate. Once one party passes, it automatically becomes the other party's property. Bank accounts many times are held that way. Insurance. So there are a lot of things that don't actually get into probate, but there's still things that you need to designate beneficiaries on, or the like. So I mean, you have to plan for them. So when you come in to look at your estate, you say, all right, do I want to go to probate court? Do I want to keep everything out, or do I want to do something like your grandmother did and give it away ahead of time, which isn't a bad idea, particularly for personal property. So there's a lot of ways to deal with what the needs might be. You just need to get in with somebody who's competent and who can walk you through it and give you the choices and options, and then you make those choices. And again, they're also always changed. You can change them.
Yes,
You can amend them at any time. So they're not permanent documents, which is something to keep in mind.
But the big thing that you brought up is that you personally are making your decisions. And I think what I've found is that husbands and wives, they've been married. They're a couple, but they're individuals. They each have their own ideas and minds. And as far as even, where we come back to my part, where it's funeral and burial, cremation, whatever, you might want one thing and they might want something else.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
It's okay. We can help you figure it out. Just because one person wants something doesn't mean that, okay, so that's what you want, that's what we'll do. And the head goes down. No.
Make it easy.
But if you don't make that decision, somebody else is going to make it for you.
That's right.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat across from families and they look at me and say, what would they have wanted?
Right.
I don't know them.
Right.
And sadly, I have sat with a couple of fathers. It's happened more often where, unusually, that a father has brought in a young child, even at the age of 12, because the mother died. They made no decisions. And I've seen that person turn to that child and say, what should I do? And I'll tell you what, that kid comes up with it, and they say it, and they say it, and they say it.
It's heartbreaking.
Don't leave it there.
Right.
Don't do that. And when I talked earlier about that family who comes in, who's made their decisions, first of all, they've pre-planned. They've also prepaid. You could spend your money down in a heartbeat over medical expense. You think, oh, I've got money, I've got insurance. That could all be gone.
Absolutely.
Medicaid comes in,
It's
gone.
Right.
It's
So
gone.
you have to pay for those things, and you have to pay for them now.
Right.
And I've seen families turn to this one, that one, that one, and that one, and be on the phone. Uncle Joe, Mom died. We don't have any money. Can you help me?
Right.
I have taken credit cards, checks.
Right.
They've both had a death. Which one do you want to be on?
Right.
The one where they've made those decisions, or the one where they haven't?
And, I would add another thing that we're talking in this in a setting where we're obviously not in an emotional distraught state.
Right.
So
Right.
so if you haven't pre-planned, you're now making these important decisions at a time when you're going through usually an enormous
Yes.
emotional situation,
Yes.
which obviously has a tendency to interfere sometimes with judgment, and it leads to family disputes because everybody's on high. So the pre-planning also helps alleviate that problem.
Right.
Because I think anybody would admit when you go through a traumatic loss of a family member, you're
Right.
not thinking as
Your
well
brain
as you
isn't
would.
with you.
Yeah,
It isn't there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if somebody commits suicide,
Oh gosh.
Oh,
and
gosh.
and we've been through that, and it's very difficult to, number one, tell the children,
Right.
tell if there's ex-spouses, if, anybody else is affected by it, and you don't know where, because say the person came in from out of town
Mm-hmm.
and decided to do it, and then you have to figure it out, and it may affect other people as well.
Right.
Especially if the suicide was done in a home, or it was done in a garage or whatever, and it affected
Yes.
other family members, it can mean a lot to be able to know and to understand what to do at that particular time, especially if they hadn't planned it at all
Right.
and you didn't think they were going to die.
Right.
So, and this is happening it's happening to a lot of kids that are on opioids and everything else. I mean, can you imagine what that parent must be going through?
Okay.
So it's important to sit down and talk about that part of it, because you don't know a sports injury or whatever, a concussion.
You go back to the epidemic that we're having. I have seen far too many families. I've even seen a few families where it has happened to more than one child in that family. It's devastating what's going on. It's heartbreaking. And no, you can't really be prepared for that.
No.
You can't. But Andrew, I want to go back to just one thing that you talked about. It's affordable.
It is.
My end is so affordable. Your end is so affordable. And lots of times people are just shying away from it because it's like, oh, well, I got to wait till I, get this, or I got to wait. I got to wait.
Right. Don't wait.
Don't
There's
wait.
no wait.
If there's any message today,
Yes,
don't wait.
don't wait.
Take care of your
They
affairs
can
when
do
you
it through
can.
credit cards. They can do it through payment plans. They can do it through a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Correct.
And it's affordable.
Yes.
It really is.
Particularly if you're dealing with just a very straightforward,
Yes.
we're not talking, now if you have tax issues because you have a high wealth individual, that's a little different thing.
Right.
But in terms of managing your affairs and everything, these are fairly straightforward processes. Some of them are, for example, Ohio and Kentucky, they have forms that they prescribe for like living wills.
Right.
So the drafting of that is really just sitting down with the client, seeing what they want, getting it executed. I'm not having to
And
sit
doing
there
it
and sit there for
properly.
3 hours and draft
Yes.
up some
I'm
complicated document.
prepared. I have a living will.
Good for you.
I have all of those papers.
Well, we're running out of time, so here's what I want to do. I want to invite you both back, and I want to talk about some other issues that deal with children, from adoption to whatever. What do you do if somebody dies, you don't know who that person is? There's a lot of things I want to talk about, because there's a lot of issues out there. So would you give your website, please, Andrew,
Sure.
where people can get a hold of you? And you two need to start a seminar together. I definitely think so.
I think
Go
it's
ahead.
a good idea. Yeah, again, Andrew Green. I'm with the Epley Legal Group. Our phone number is 513-621-6275. Call us, set up an appointment as soon as you can. Like I said, we work with our clients and make things affordable and easy and comfortable throughout the process.
And Sue?
And I'm Sue Slusher, and I'm with the Arlington Memorial Gardens, Funeral Home, Crematory, and Memorial Park. Our number is 513-521-7003, amgardens.org.
And don't forget our websites, KathrynRaakersWorld.com and Let'sJustTalkRadio.com. We'll see you later.